Բարի օր, ես Աստղիկ Սարգսյանն եմ, այսօր խոսելու ենք հայ-նիդերլանդական հարաբերություններից։ Իմ հյուրը Հայաստանում Նիդերլանդների դեսպան Նիկոլաս Սխերմերսն է։ Mr. Ambassador, thank you for accepting the invitation to give an interview.
Շնորհակալություն, շատ ուրախ եմ հանդիպել ձեզ հետ։
Mr. Ambassador, what was your first impression of Armenia and does it feel like home today?
Yes, well, my first impression was a little bit awkward. I arrived here in the middle of the night with 3 big suitcases. I didn't know anyone. I was dropped off by a protocol of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at my apartment that was rented the day before by my colleagues in Tbilisi. And that was on a Saturday morning, I remember very well. I had to stay in quarantine for 24 hours to get my PCR test. And then in the evening, I was allowed to explore the city for the first time. And I didn't know anyone, I didn't have an office, I didn't have a car. And then from there, you enter a new world. That was a very pleasant experience, I can say. It was immediately as if I was home. Yerevan is a very nice city, not perhaps the nicest city in terms of grand architecture or that kind of things, but it's pleasant enough to see. But more importantly, it's a city that makes one feel welcome. The people are nice, the people or the situation is safe. You can walk safely in the streets. There is always a lot of things going on. People are hanging around with their children. There are restaurants and bars everywhere. We have a very specific word in Dutch for that, gezellig, which doesn't translate into English. But that is exactly the word I would use for Yerevan. And this has also been confirmed by my family, my children, my wife, who have recently come to Armenia to visit. And I think this was my first impression. So to answer your question, absolutely I feel at home in Yerevan.
The Parliament of the Netherlands has adopted a motion with the overwhelming majority of votes which calls on the government not to visit Euro 2020 quarterfinals in Baku, Azerbaijan, if the Dutch national team qualifies. The resolution cites the violation of ceasefire agreement and international law of war, the fact that 200 and more Armenian soldiers are being held as prisoners in Azerbaijan, and that there is a trophy park in Baku with, among other things, helmets of Armenian soldiers. Your comments, please.
Well, first of all, let me say that the war is, of course, a very complex situation, a very sad thing to have happened. And the Netherlands is very concerned about the developments in that regard. As far as the prisoners of war are concerned, the Netherlands is also of the opinion that they should be released as soon as possible, as we have always stated. This is according to international law, and that is what the Netherlands government stands for. I also want to state that we should make a distinction between what our parliament issues in terms of resolutions and what the government's policy is. There is a slight distinction in the sense that the parliament is controlling the government and their resolutions are not necessarily translated immediately into policy. So the government is working on how to implement this kind of resolutions of our parliament. And finally, I can only congratulate the Czech Republic for beating the Netherlands so that we were not put in the position to go to Baku with our national team, and that the Italians in the end won the Euro championship.
Mr. Ambassador, the Netherlands continues supporting Armenia with the reforms and strengthening of the democratization and the strengthening of the rule of law. In which directions do you think the above mentioned should unfold?
Well, let me start with the reason that the Netherlands government decided to open an embassy in Yerevan. The Netherlands has quite a big diplomatic footprint in the world, but did not have an embassy in Armenia for many years. However, due to the Velvet Revolution in 2018, and some other developments. I think also that Armenia was already high on the radar of the Dutch government to open an embassy, since we had representations elsewhere in the region, made us brought us to the decision to open this embassy here in Yerevan. And I also should mention the role of the Armenian ambassador in the Netherlands in that regard, who played an important role in lobbying for such a step. And because we had or have decided to open this embassy, of course we are going to be active in the field of rule of law and democratization. Our embassy in Tbilisi, who was responsible for Armenia before the embassy here was opened, started already a program in many areas in that regard. In the last year, I've been not only opening the embassy, but also starting up, together with my colleagues here in the embassy, a number of activities in that in the field of democratization and the rule of law. So we are supporting many NGOs. We are discussing with several institutions like the Parliament, like the Constitutional Court, how we can support Armenia's development in the future. And the reason we do that is, I think, a very important one. The Netherlands always stands for law, for international law. That is what made our country great. That is how we survived in a hostile environment in Europe in the the centuries ago. But we also think that the development of the rule of law and democratization brings the best out of the people. It creates opportunities for people, and therefore will bring more welfare to people, and therefore we would like to support Armenia in that regard. And I think it's an asset of Armenia to have set these steps in the last couple of years, and I hope wholeheartedly that the new government is going to proceed in this direction, and they will have our support.
The Netherlands is the second in the world with export volumes of agricultural goods. Armenia has a great potential for agriculture as well. What's your vision of agricultural, so to speak, collaboration between our countries?
Well, that is a very interesting one as well. Agriculture, indeed, being perhaps the most important sector for the Netherlands in terms of exports, but also in production. If you look at how the Netherlands is making use of its agricultural land, this is really something I'm very proud of, and I hope that we can share, in any case, part of that knowledge and capacity with a country like Armenia. What I've seen here so far is that there is indeed a large potential, and that was already on the radar with many Dutch companies, with also your diaspora. I think the diaspora in the Netherlands being very active here in the relationship with Armenia. I've seen here companies that are producing for the export to, for instance, the Russian market or to the Iranian market. And the Netherlands or Dutch companies are very interested to invest in this kind of activities. So my expectation is that, or my goal basically, is to connect more of these activities. I've seen already many companies being active. What I hope to do is to bring them together to share their knowledge, to share their networks, and basically also to bring other companies to get Armenia on their radar, and to convince them that this country has opportunities for them to offer. And once the Dutch companies come to Armenia, I think that also the Armenian companies will benefit from this. I think the business model we are looking for is not to sell Dutch products to Armenia, but to convince Dutch companies to invest in this economy, and to see how together we can benefit from that.
Do we have any tangible results so far in this regard?
There are, but I think that it would be premature to claim them as the results of this embassy. So I've seen indeed a number of companies already active here. I've seen, for instance, a greenhouse where strawberries are being grown with Dutch equipment. The strawberry plants themselves are being brought from the Netherlands, and the strawberries are being exported to Russia at good prices. So I think that in the end the profit margins for Armenia are substantial. But I hope that I will be able to bring more of those companies to multiply this kind of successes.
In a previous interview, Mr. Ambassador, you mentioned that Armenia is also an interesting partner, or could be an interesting partner, in the IT sector. What's your vision of furthering, enhancing collaboration in this field? Well,
maybe I should say a couple of words on my own studies. I used to be a student in astronomy, and what we have noticed in the Netherlands is that the hard sciences are not so attractive anymore to many of our students, and including myself. I switched to political science at some stage. But what we have seen here in Armenia, or what I have seen so far, is that the hard sciences are much more normal for students to choose as a topic. And Dutch companies at the moment are in the IT sector in particular are always looking for talent. I have been approached by companies when I was still in the Netherlands before I landed in Armenia with the request to look for this kind of talent, and not only to as in the form of a brain drain. We don't want to take all the talented people and to have them working in the Netherlands or in Europe or elsewhere, but also to set up companies here, startups, and to outsource activities that can no longer be done in the Netherlands or in Europe for that matter. So I think there is a large potential, and this autumn we will start with a project to bring in some expertise from the Netherlands and to combine that with expertise on the Armenian side, to see how we can bridge this gap and how we can connect both sectors here in Armenia and in the Netherlands.
The Netherlands and Armenia have historical ties as well, although those might not be very well known. We have had trade relationship before in the 18th century. Besides, the first Bible in Armenian was published in the Netherlands by a priest who was a friend of Rembrandt. What's your evaluation of the 30-year diplomatic relations between our countries?
A very good question, and I have to mention that you miss perhaps the most important relation we have, and that is that goes back to the year 347, when a bishop landed in the Netherlands in the city of Maastricht, became the first Roman Catholic bishop in the Netherlands, from where Christianity was spread all over the Netherlands. And his name was Sint Servaas. And he was most probably an Armenian bishop. So in that way you could perhaps even state that Armenia brought Christianity to the Netherlands. So that is, I think, a very important relationship. But we have many more. I've discovered here an organ in the city that was built by a Dutch company in 1975. There are many other relations that are very important. And at the moment we are working together with your ambassador in the Netherlands on making plans for celebrating the 30 years of diplomatic relations. Armenia is part of our constituency in the World Bank, in EBRD and IMF, so a very important partner for us in the international financial world. We team up in the meetings in these institutions, and therefore I think this is all the result of the 30 years diplomatic relations. And I think that culminated in the fact that we have now both embassies in The Hague and in Yerevan, and that probably is marking the start of the next 30 years, which should become even more fruitful than they already are.
What else do the Dutch and the Armenians have in common besides Christianity?
I think that what pleasantly surprised me here is that Armenians can be as blunt as Dutch, so that I see that as a compliment because it makes our lives very clear. It's easy to communicate. I think Armenians are traders, like the Dutch are, so that again is something that that connects us. And something that strikes me very much, Dutch people usually are fighting over a bill like the Armenians, but in different ways. That's where you always want to pay, we like the other to pay. So that is a perfect match, I would say.
Mr. Ambassador, do you see ways of still improving and furthering what we have so far in terms of diplomatic relationship mostly?
Absolutely, and in that regard I'm looking forward to the plans of the new government. I think that in many international organizations the Netherlands and Armenia can team up. I think that the sky is the limit, whether it's political, diplomatic, economic or cultural. People-to-people contact is something that we can work on very much. We haven't mentioned tourism yet. I think that is also a sector where Armenia was quite unknown to Dutch people. However, before COVID, there was already a change in that regard. People were getting interested in this part of the world and wanted to travel to Armenia. COVID, of course, changed all that. I have good hopes that after we have conquered or have gone beyond the COVID situation as we knew it in the past couple of months, Dutch people will find their way to Armenia again and will cherish, will enjoy the great nature, the great hospitality of this country, and will connect with the Armenian people in that regard. So I think there is ample opportunity to improve this. And I'm very proud and glad to be here to help in that regard.
Speaking of tourism, the government of the Netherlands has classified Armenia in its list of safe countries for travel. Has the war affected this?
No, I don't think so. The list has been set up in principle in Brussels by the European Union. The Netherlands follows that list. Of course, we always look at the war situation, and there was a time that we were a little bit concerned, so it might have affected in that regard for a very brief period. At the moment, it's not affecting. I think the Dutch to choose for Armenia as a holiday destination. On the contrary, perhaps it's perhaps a bit cynical to say, but the war has also drawn attention to the Dutch people for Armenia, and I'm pretty sure that many Dutch people are looking at Armenia with a very positive heart and are looking at it from that perspective as a possible tourist destination.
What else can be done to put Armenia on the list of the Dutch favorite tourism destinations?
Well, that is a difficult question to which I do not have an immediate answer. I think that many things are being done already. I think that your embassy in the Netherlands is doing a great job. I think that the various tourism agencies are doing what they need to do. And from my part, I'm trying to put Armenia on the radar, on the map as well. I think that probably the best thing that can happen is that many other tourists, Dutch tourists, come to Armenia and talk about their experiences with Armenia back in the Netherlands. The word of mouth is probably the strongest that can be added to what's already been being done.
Is there anything that we Armenians can do to increase the Dutch interest in our country and the history of the country?
I think that is very difficult. You have already, our great respect with for the fact that you have invented wines so many thousand years ago, when we still had to invent the concept of the Netherlands. We didn't exist at all in those days when you were drinking wine already. And were wearing leather shoes and all that kind of things.
Well, that's humble. Sounds humble.
It is. Yeah, but I think that the Armenian people there really have made history in that regard, which is much longer than our own history. But at the same time, what else can you do? You have a perfect kitchen. Dutch people love the chorevats and all the other delicacies of the Armenian kitchen. We like your wines, but they are not so known yet. And that is what I say. People have to come here to experience the hospitality, to see the Armenian beauty, and then go back, tell their friends and families, and I think that works best. And maybe your diaspora can also play a role in that.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of cultural ties, a memorandum of understanding and cooperation was signed between Armenian Echmiadzin and Dutch Almelo. What's your vision of furthering cultural ties between our countries?
Yeah, the cultural ties do exist. We are working on them, as I mentioned, together with your embassy in the Netherlands. We're looking at opportunities. Unfortunately, we don't have big budgets. I think that is, in difficult times, always one of the sectors that is first hit by budget cuts. But I hope that many individual activities will arise in that domain. I just want to mention that at the moment we are supporting activities in the field of literature. We're looking at possibilities in music, theater, etc. A couple of books have been translated from Dutch into Armenian. I would like to mention Anne Frank's diary. I also would like to mention the Letter to the King, which is the best children book ever written in the Netherlands. It's translated and available in Armenian at the moment. Another book is currently under translation, and we're looking at possibilities to also translate some of your literature into Dutch, so that we can connect both peoples also at that level. Yeah, and then I think we have to develop other initiatives together with individuals, organizations for the years to come, and that is not only a government task but also a task of people themselves.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Շնորհակալություն.
Իմ հյուրը Հայաստանում Նիդերլանդների դեսպան Նիկոլաս Սխերմերսն էր։ Կհանդիպենք։